was actually walking the show floor earlier, and there was a very interesting demo around circular economy. And it's interesting because as a tech analyst, covering, anything from PC to smartphone, the circular economy discussion is quite easy for people to understand when you're thinking about plastic and reusing metal. When it comes to data centers, it's a bit harder to understand what can happen there, but it's pretty amazing the kind of things that you can do. Can you talk us through that?
Sure. And this is a space that's near and dear to me. So I started at AWS almost 12 years ago, right? And we had data centers that were operating for a handful of years at that point. But I've seen kind of the life cycle of some of our data centers and some of the components start becoming end of life and coming out of those sites. And so it's exciting to finally start talking about some of this great work we're doing. And so when we think about circular economy, there's really kind of a three-prong approach we take. The first is designing better. We work with our hardware engineering teams to make sure that the materials that we're using have sustainability and circular economy in mind at the very forefront. And so it's exciting that we have 30% of our materials going into the components are either recycled or bio-based plastics, which is fantastic. The second prong is really, how do we operate longer? How do we safely operate the materials and the equipment inside of our data centers at a longer pace? So our servers run, we push them from 5 years to 6 years. Our S3 hard drives are now running, a couple of years beyond what we originally thought. That's the easy way to avoid costs and to avoid carbon emissions, is by continuing to find safe ways to operate longer. The last piece is, how do we recover more? It's really exciting because we have more than 99% of our materials that are sent to reverse logistics hubs are being reused, resold, or recycled, right? That is a massive volume that's coming out of there. And when we think about our hardware components, we have over 23.5 million hardware components that are being diverted from landfills and being recycled or resold on a secondary market. And so, when we think about circular economy, we don't just think about it in a linear fashion. We think about, okay, how are we using each piece of those components? And then how do we sit down with our hardware engineering teams at the very beginning to help them influence the designs up front with circularity in mind?
Which is how it's supposed to be done.